I do want to close, though, on a very sad note, and it's a note of remembrance, something that happened a number of years ago. And let me just frame it by saying that you may recall that during the summer, we had a rededication of plaques out at the parking lot that's in front of the Westchester County Center. And in it, we rededicated and replaced around the perimeter of that parking lot plaques that honored our war dead from World War I. Those men, those brave men who died during World War I, who were Westchester residents, died over 100 years ago. They made a sacrifice of their lives at a young age as members of the military. And we wanted to make sure that once we finished the COVID use of the county center, they had big tenting out there for potential usage as a field hospital, and then that was all deconstructed. We reestablished, with the state of New York, of course, the parking lot, and we replanted and rededicated all those plaques because we don't forget. The ultimate sacrifice of those individuals in World War I my grandparent level recognition, and for somebody that's out there today, probably 4 generations ago, a relative who died in World War I. We maintain that same sense, that a sacrifice and the ultimate sacrifice made by our veterans are never to be forgotten. Now, we have Veterans Day coming up in November. We certainly think of our veterans and Gold Star mothers in September and Memorial Day. But today is a Remembrance Day of something that was very sobering. 40 years ago, 1983, there was an incident that happened in Beirut that we may have forgotten, but we should never forget. A group called Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for bombing of the barracks that housed Marine members from the United States Marine Corps who were posted in Beirut, Lebanon, as a force to help stabilize a country that was going through a terrible civil war scenario. Caspar Weinberger, who was then the United States Secretary of Defense, said there was no particular knowledge of who did the bombing. Some analysts highlight the role of Iran and Hezbollah, calling it an Iranian operation from top to bottom, but there was no consensus. A large delivery truck drove up to the Beirut International Airport where the Marine barracks were located. They turned on an access road. They rushed through a barbed wire fence. And the driver of this truck passed between sentry posts, crashed through the gates, and detonated explosives with a power equal to more than 12,000 pounds of TNT. The explosion crumbled the 4-story building, and it crushed to death service members, U.S. Marines, while they were sleeping. This terrorist attack killed 220 Marines and 21 other U.S. service members who were stationed there to help keep the peace in a war-torn Lebanon. It was the bloodiest day in the history of the U.S. Marine Corps since World War II, when Marines fought to secure Iwo Jima. There's a local element to this as well. We lost 3 people that day. 40 years ago, they've been gone since their ultimate sacrifice, and I want to remember their names. U.S. Marine Corps Corporal James J. Jakowski of South Salem was killed in action that day. United States Marine Corps Corporal Bert Corcoran of Katona was killed in action in the Marine Barracks that day. United States Marine Corps Corporal Craig Weish of Ossining, New York, was killed in action that day in the Marine Barracks. We lost those 3 individuals and a total of 241 Americans that day to a terrorist act, 40 years ago today. Terrorism isn't something that happened yesterday. It would be foolish to think that terrorism will go away because we hope for some meeting of the minds that people will agree to. We lost these men 40 years ago. We ultimately lost Lebanon to become a haven for terrorists. Now Hezbollah controls Lebanon and continues to be a force in the Middle East, controlled by Iran, which continues to be a force. Iran took our hostages in 1979. That was well before this incident happened 40 years ago. That was 44 years ago. We live in a dangerous world. But my purpose as a county executive is not to talk about the international, or for that matter, the national implications of this. It's to remember 3 Westchester men. They were boys. They were young men. They grew up here in Westchester County. They played in the same streets and lots and playgrounds and ball fields that children play today. And they decided that they would serve their country by joining the Marines. And it's not easy to be in any of the armed forces service branches, and it's even more difficult to be a Marine. The grueling process winnows out only to the best of those. And I have friends of mine, Jim Masano of our team, head of consumer protection, made it into U.S. Marines, and that is quite an important achievement. These 3 men from Westchester County died that day. They were sleeping. They were sleeping in their barracks. They were not in the field. They were not in a combat setting. They were there as a peacekeeping force. But the forces that did not want peace won that skirmish that day by killing those Americans. We remember them. We pray for them. Had they been alive today, they'd still be younger than I am, probably somewhere in their 60s, having enjoyed a full life. They died, I believe, before they had the chance to marry and have children and to have grandchildren, to be there for the graduation of a child, to see the birth of a grandchild. If they were Yankee fans, or Met fans, they missed achievements that would have come for sports teams that they rooted for. They missed the ability to spend a life with a person they loved. All of that was sacrificed sleeping in those barracks that day. And the least we can do is to remember them and to pray for them and to know that their sacrifice was not in vain, that the America that they stood for is an America that will stand up to terrorism in every turn, that America that will not be afraid, and that we will risk, all of us, the approbation of people that disagree with us and the yellings and the chantings, because we still stand for certain principles. And we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. This is not a perfect nation. We don't purport that. But when we deal with a country like Iran, which is one of the highest in the ranking lists of terrorist actions and of human rights violations, how can anybody put that on an even platform? Let us mourn once again James Jakowski of South Salem, Bert Corcoran of Katona, Craig Weish of Ossining. Let's remember those names, and they are at peace. We are not at peace. The Middle East is not at peace. But let us try to find a path to peace while we live so that we never have another act of terrorism. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.